The sun hung low over the Denver skyline as Malik Johnson guided his black Tesla through traffic. He had just finished a client presentation that could land his company a $1 million defense contract. At 34, Malik was living proof that discipline could rewrite destiny. From a kid in Atlanta public housing to an MIT-educated aerospace systems engineer, every success was built from scratch. But that Tuesday afternoon would remind him that no matter how high a black man climbed, there were still people determined to drag him down. The flashing red and blue lights appeared in his rearview mirror without warning. Malik slowed, signaled, and eased onto the shoulder. A white female officer approached, tall, confident, her blonde ponytail flicking with each step. Her name tag read, Officer Rachel Moore. "License and registration," she said curtly. Malik handed them over without a word. "You know why I pulled you over?" "I might have been a few miles over," Malik admitted, calm as ever. Rachel smirked. "A few? You were 10 over in a 30 zone," he nodded. "Then I'll take the ticket." But she didn't write it right away. Instead, she leaned against his window, her tone softening. "You from around here?" "Yes, ma'am. Denver." She tilted her head, studying his face. "You don't sound like you're from Denver." "You've got that polished accent." "College boy?" Malik smiled politely. "MIT." Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, impressive. Smart and handsome." Her lips curled into something that wasn't professional. "You know, I've always had a thing for men like you." Malik's expression didn't change, but his heartbeat quickened. "Men like me?" "You know," she said, lowering her voice. Tall, dark, confident, exotic. That word landed like a slap. Malik's jaw tightened. "Can I have my ticket now, officer?" She scribbled something on the pad and handed it to him, along with a small white card. "My personal number," she said, smirking. "If things ever get boring at home, give me a call. I love diversity." He took it without reacting, but inside something burned cold and deep. When she finally walked away, Malik sat in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel. For years, he had endured microaggressions, backhanded compliments, and subtle racism in boardrooms. But this was different. This was a woman with a badge using her authority to flirt? No, to fetishize. Him. He looked down at the card on his passenger seat. Officer Rachel Moore, Denver Police Department. And underneath, in neat handwriting, "Don't be shy, handsome." Malik turned on his phone and played back the dashcam recording. Her voice was crystal clear, every word. He exhaled slowly. "Okay," he murmured. "You just chose the wrong man." That evening, Malik pulled into the driveway of his modern home. His wife, Alicia, was waiting by the door. She knew his moods better than anyone. "You're late," she said gently. "Rough day?" He smiled faintly, trying to shake off the anger. "Something like that." They ate dinner quietly. But Alicia watched the way his hand kept tapping the table, the way his eyes stared past the room. "What happened?" she finally asked. Malik hesitated, then handed her the card. She frowned, reading the name. "A cop gave you this?" "After calling me exotic." Alicia's face hardened. "You're joking." "I wish I was." He played the recording on his phone. When the officer's words filled the room, "I've always had a thing for men like you." Alicia's mouth fell open. "This isn't just inappropriate," she said. "It's disgusting. She's using her badge to hit on you." Malik nodded slowly. "And I'm pretty sure I'm not the first." That night, after Alicia went to bed, Malik sat alone in his study. His mind wasn't consumed by rage, and it was analyzing, calculating. He had spent his career solving complex systems, designing logic-driven solutions. And this was just another system. Corrupt, ugly, but fixable. He opened his laptop and began researching Officer Rachel Moore. Her social media was public, and what he found made his stomach turn. Photo after photo of her with black men. At bars, charity events, gyms, always smiling, always holding them too close. The captions: "I love meeting people from different cultures." Another: "My favorite flavor is chocolate." The comments beneath were even worse. Her friends joked openly about her type. As Malik scrolled, he saw pattern after pattern, not admiration, but obsession. By midnight, he had screenshots of everything. He created a folder labeled Officer Moore Evidence. At 1:12 a.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number, Rachel Moore. "Hey, handsome. Still thinking about me?" He stared at the message, then another arrived. Rachel, that wedding ring doesn't have to be permanent. Malik's breath slowed. She had accessed his personal number through the police system. That was illegal. He screenshotted everything, then sat back in silence. This wasn't just about him anymore. How many other black men had she pulled over, harassed and humiliated, believing they'd stay quiet because she was a white cop with authority? Malik closed his laptop. His decision was made. Tomorrow, he'd call the one person who knew how to turn injustice into strategy, his older brother, Marcus Johnson, a civil rights attorney in Los Angeles. For now, he whispered into the dark. You wanted diversity, Officer Moore? You're about to get it, in court. The morning sun crept through the blinds as Malik's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Marcus Johnson, his older brother, answered on the first ring. Talk to me, little bro. You don't usually call before sunrise. Malik hesitated for a moment. You ever heard of an officer named Rachel Moore, Denver PD? Marcus's tone changed immediately. Why? Malik forwarded the recordings and screenshots. Within seconds, Marcus's lawyer instincts kicked in. Malik, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is a civil rights case waiting to happen. You have sexual harassment, data misuse, and racial misconduct, all recorded. She's not flirting. She's abusing authority. Malik nodded slowly. I thought so. Give me 48 hours, Marcus said. I'll dig. But be careful. If she's bold enough to text you from a police system, she's reckless enough to follow you too. The search by noon. Malik had driven downtown to his office at Orion Dynamics, a small aerospace design firm. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept returning to that smirk, that power she flaunted. During his lunch break, he opened his laptop again and dove deeper. Public complaint databases, court filings, Reddit threads from locals. He found them. 3 buried complaints against Officer Moore in the past 5 years. All dismissed. Each one filed by black men. Each labeled unsubstantiated flirtatious behavior. It was a pattern, protected by silence. The call 2 days later, Marcus called again. Malik, you need to hear this, Marcus said, voice low. Rachel Moore has 6 internal reports filed against her, all sealed, 2 from officers in her own precinct. One of them described her as using minority stops for personal gratification. It got buried under lack of evidence. Malik clenched his jaw. So the department covered for her. Not just covered, promoted her. She's now head of the Community Sensitivity Unit. Can you believe that? The irony stung. Marcus continued. We can't go straight to court yet. She'll hide behind her badge. We need a controlled exposure, something that forces the department's hand. A pattern, a public spotlight. Malik frowned. You want to bait her? Marcus's tone sharpened. No, I want to record her doing what she already does, but this time in front of witnesses. The setup over the next week, Malik played his role carefully. He replied to one of Rachel's texts, keeping his tone polite but distant. Malik, I don't mix personal life with cops, officer. Rachel, oh, come on. You don't have to call me officer when we're off duty. Malik, if that's what you want, maybe coffee. Neutral ground. She agreed instantly. Marcus and Alicia listened in disbelief. You sure about this? Alicia asked. You're walking into the lion's den. Malik's eyes were steady. If I don't stop her, she'll keep doing it. To someone who might not have the proof I do, they chose a small cafe downtown. Marcus set up a hidden mic, while a friend from a local civil rights group sat at a nearby table, recording from a phone. When Rachel arrived, she looked exactly as Malik remembered. Uniform replaced by a tight white dress. Badge on her belt like a trophy. She smiled. So you did want to see me again? Malik kept his tone neutral. I wanted to understand why you risk your badge for this. She laughed. What's the point of power if you can't enjoy it? Her voice dripped arrogance. Malik leaned forward. You ever think about the people you hurt? Rachel tilted her head. Please, they love it. I'm doing them a favor, giving them attention. You'd be surprised how fast a man softens when a white woman in uniform shows interest. That was the line Marcus needed. Every word was caught on audio. Rachel smiled, sipping her drink. Don't look so shocked, Malik. You're different, though. You're educated, successful. You can handle a little attention. Malik forced a small smile. You have no idea what I can handle. The fallout that evening, Malik and Marcus sat in a quiet office reviewing the footage. Marcus leaned back, exhaling. She just confessed to racially motivated misconduct on camera. This is gold. Alicia crossed her arms. Now what? Marcus looked up. Now, we make her department listen. And when they won't, the world will. They reached out to Eleanor Vega, an investigative journalist who'd exposed corruption in Denver City Council the year before. She listened to the audio once and said, "This isn't a story. This is a scandal." But Malik hesitated. If this goes public too fast, she'll claim I seduced her, spin it as consensual. Marcus nodded. Then we don't leak it. We let the system hang itself. We send anonymous evidence to her own department, make them bury it, and then we expose the cover-up. Malik stared at the evidence folder on his laptop. He didn't want revenge. He wanted change. He uploaded everything to a secure drive, encrypted, time-stamped. Then he sat back, whispering to himself, "You started this, Rachel. I'll finish it. Clean." The warning. 3 nights later, Malik noticed a car parked across from his house. Same spot, same time. Every night, he told Marcus. Classic intimidation. Marcus said, "They know you're digging." Malik sighed. Then they're scared. At midnight, his phone buzzed again. This time, not a text. A video. Rachel, alone in her patrol car. She looked into the camera, whispering, "You're playing a dangerous game, Malik. People like you always think they can outsmart the system. But the system protects its own." Then she smiled, cold and deliberate. "See you soon, engineer." The message ended. Malik stared at the dark screen, pulse steady, not afraid, just resolved. He forwarded the clip to Marcus with one line. She just buried herself. The spark. The next morning, Denver woke to a shock. Officer Rachel Moore was trending, though not by name. An anonymous YouTube video titled "Badge of Desire, a Cop's Secret Obsession" had gone viral overnight. It featured blurred footage of her statements, her words clear and damning. "You'd be surprised how fast a man softens when a white woman in uniform shows interest." The comments exploded. Who is she? This is abuse of power. They always get away, not this time. By noon, the Denver PD had issued a statement promising an internal investigation. Malik sat in silence, watching it all unfold. He didn't post it. Marcus hadn't either. Someone else, likely Eleanor, had leaked it early. But it didn't matter. The spark had been lit, and this time the fire wouldn't stop until the truth burned through every wall of silence. The viral leak spread like wildfire. By sunrise, every local station in Denver replayed the blurred audio of Officer Rachel Moore's voice. The police department called it a doctored recording, but people knew. The tone, the arrogance, it sounded too real. Inside a downtown conference room, Malik, Marcus, Alicia, and journalist Eleanor Vega watched the chaos unfold on a muted television. Marcus spoke first. "She's going to deny everything. The department will circle the wagons. We need undeniable proof she used her badge to target black men." Eleanor nodded. "If we can connect the victims, I'll air it nationally. Once it's on record, the DA can't bury it." The victims. Marcus started digging through old complaint files. He called the names listed, one by one. Some numbers were disconnected. Some men hung up, afraid. But one voice stayed on the line. Terrence Hill, age 29, former mechanic. "Yeah," he said. "Rachel Moore, blonde cop, blue Charger, always smelled like mint gum. Pulled me over outside the car wash last year. She told me I looked like trouble, then asked if I worked out. When I didn't flirt back, she wrote me up for resisting." Marcus recorded every word with Terrence's consent. A pattern was forming. Same phrases, same power game. By the end of the week, they had 5 victims. 5 men, 5 stories identical in method and tone. Eleanor's eyes gleamed. 5 voices means she can't call it coincidence. The plan, they couldn't just expose her. They needed to expose the system that protected her. Marcus outlined the blueprint on a whiteboard. Gather sworn statements. Send them anonymously to Internal Affairs. Wait for the department to bury it, and record every step. Then leak the evidence of the cover-up, not just the crimes. Malik smiled grimly. So we trap them with their own silence. Alicia looked uneasy. "What if they retaliate?" "You already saw that car outside." Malik met her eyes. "Then we make it impossible for them to touch us. Everything goes public the moment something happens to me." He held up a small USB drive, encrypted, mirrored to the cloud. "Insurance policy. The shadow that night, Malik drove home and noticed the same blue Charger trailing behind him. He turned suddenly onto a side street. The car followed. He pulled into a gas station and parked under bright lights. The Charger slowed, then sped off. Malik dialed Marcus. "They're watching me again." Marcus's voice was tight. "Good. Keep the dash cam running." Every scare tactic adds fuel to our case. Internal affairs 2 weeks later. A plain white envelope arrived at Denver PD. Inside, sworn statements. Screenshots, the full cafe recording. The next morning, Chief Donovan called a closed meeting. Rachel Moore sat stiffly at the long oak table. "Sir, I'm being set up. Someone edited that audio. Probably that engineer I stopped. Malik Johnson." The chief frowned. "Did you give him your number?" She hesitated. "I might have." As a community contact, the chief exhaled. "Rachel, this looks bad. Keep your head down. No interviews, no social media." When she left, his deputy leaned in. "Sir, what if this goes public?" Donovan rubbed his temples. "Then we'll say we investigated and found nothing. Same as before." Every word was being recorded. A small wireless mic, hidden beneath the conference table, transmitted the conversation straight to Marcus's laptop across town. The leak 3 days later, Eleanor's expose aired on the evening news. Her voiceover echoed through living rooms across Colorado. Leaked recordings suggest Denver PD ignored multiple harassment complaints against Officer Rachel Moore. Internal documents reveal senior officials discussed burying evidence to protect the department's image. The story hit national headlines within hours. Badge of Desire trended on social media. Civil rights groups demanded an external investigation. Outside the precinct, protesters gathered with signs, "Protect and serve, not prey and control." Justice for the silenced. The downfall Rachel Moore's life began to unravel overnight. Her face, once hidden behind blurred footage, now appeared on every major outlet. Videos of her traffic stops resurfaced, showing her leaning too close, laughing too long, touching arms she shouldn't have touched. Malik watched the broadcasts quietly. He didn't gloat. He just whispered, "Now the truth speaks for itself." Eleanor called him later that night. The department suspended her. Internal Affairs just confirmed a federal review. "You did it, Malik." He shook his head. "We did it. And it's not over until the system changes." The letter A week later, a certified envelope arrived at his home. Inside, no threats, no apology, just a single page on official stationery. "Mr. Johnson, we acknowledge receipt of evidence submitted regarding Officer Moore. A formal inquiry is underway. Your cooperation has been invaluable." Chief Donovan, Denver PD. Malik folded it carefully, slipped it into a drawer beside the original business card she'd handed him months ago. The one that started it all. 2 symbols of power. One misused, one reclaimed. The shift news broke that several officers had stepped forward to testify against Moore's behavior, some saying they'd been pressured to stay silent. The FBI opened a civil rights probe. For the first time, the Denver PD faced public oversight led by a civilian board. Marcus smiled as he read the headlines. "You see, change starts with exposure." Malik nodded. "Exposure and evidence." Alicia looked at her husband, pride softening her eyes. "You turned pain into purpose." He took her hand. "This was never about revenge. It's about making sure no one else gets pulled over and treated like prey." The public confrontation a month later, Malik attended a community forum broadcast live on television. He stood before the microphone, calm, articulate, unwavering. "I'm not here as a victim," he said. "I'm here as proof. Proof that silence protects predators, and truth, even when whispered, can dismantle systems built on fear." The crowd erupted in applause. In the back of the room, Rachel Moore sat with her lawyer, head lowered. Her badge lay suspended, her power gone. For the first time, she was the one being watched, questioned, recorded. The Denver winter came early that year. The air was sharp, the streets half frozen, and the city was still buzzing from the scandal that had torn through its police department. For the first time in decades, citizens were talking about more than crime statistics. They were talking about power, race, and accountability, and at the center of it all stood Malik Johnson, the man who refused to be silent. The hearing, it was a cold Monday morning when Malik walked up the marble steps of the courthouse. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted his name. He wore a gray suit, calm, measured, and deliberate. Inside, the room was packed. Civil rights advocates on one side. Police representatives on the other. Officer Rachel Moore sat at the defense table, pale, eyes downcast. Her once confident smirk had vanished, replaced by sleepless exhaustion. The judge entered. Court is now in session. The prosecutor began. Your Honor, this case represents not just misconduct by one officer, but a culture that enabled it. We will present evidence of racial targeting, sexual exploitation, and departmental negligence. Marcus, sitting beside Malik, leaned forward. Watch her face, he whispered. She's not ready for this. The testimonies. The first witness, Terrence Hill, took the stand. His voice trembled at first, but grew stronger with every sentence. She pulled me over for nothing. She told me I looked like the kind of man who liked danger. When I didn't flirt back, she wrote me up. I lost my job after that ticket, couldn't pay the fines. I thought nobody would believe me. Then came Andre Miller, Caleb Rhodes, Jamal Hayes, each telling near-identical stories. Every time Rachel's name was spoken, she flinched. When Malik was called, the courtroom went silent. He stood tall, composed, and spoke clearly into the microphone. I didn't come here to ruin someone's life. I came here because she used her badge like a weapon, not to protect but to control. I want a world where my nephews can drive home from work without wondering if they'll become someone's fantasy or someone's victim. His words cut through the silence like a blade. The judge looked down, visibly moved. The collapse midway through the proceedings. Eleanor Vega's investigative footage played on the screen. The cafe meeting, the recordings, the internal meeting between Chief Donovan and his deputy. Gasps filled the courtroom. Rachel's defense attorney sank into his chair. Then something unexpected happened. Rachel stood up. Tears streaked her cheeks. Her voice shook. I don't know why I did it, she said softly. Maybe I liked the power. Maybe I liked the attention. But I never thought about what it did to them. To you. She turned to Malik. I'm sorry. The judge tapped his gavel once. Officer Moore, this court finds your actions unlawful and unbecoming of law enforcement. You are hereby stripped of your badge and sentenced to 5 years probation, mandatory counseling, and permanent removal from public service. The room erupted. Some clapped, some wept. Malik closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just peace. The reform weeks passed. Denver PD launched an internal overhaul, new ethics boards, diversity oversight, and an anonymous misconduct portal. Civil rights lawyers from across the country cited the Johnson case as a model for reform. Marcus spoke at law schools, using the case to teach about evidence-based justice. Eleanor's documentary, The Badge and the Burden, went viral worldwide. And Malik, he didn't chase fame or attention. He returned to his quiet life of design and data, but he also started something new, the Truthline Foundation, offering legal and emotional support to victims of police exploitation. Their motto, silence is not safety. The interview months later. Malik sat down for a televised interview. The host leaned forward. You faced humiliation, danger, and retaliation. What gave you the courage to keep going? Malik smiled faintly. I stopped being afraid the moment I realized my fear was the thing they counted on. When you know the truth is on your side, you don't need permission to speak. You just need proof. The audience applauded softly. The host asked one final question. Do you forgive her? Malik paused. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to carry someone else's guilt forever. I forgive her, but I won't forget the lesson. Rachel's End, in a quiet suburb outside Denver, Rachel Moore lived alone. Her house, once full of trophies and photos, now echoed with silence. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw the woman she'd become, a warning, not a hero. One evening, she turned on the TV. Malik was speaking at a community event, surrounded by young black students and local activists. For the first time, she smiled, not out of pride but regret. She whispered to herself, he did what I never could. He changed something. The legacy. A year later, Denver hosted its first Civil Equality Summit, led by Marcus and Malik Johnson. Leaders from around the nation attended. The mayor introduced Malik to the crowd. Some heroes carry weapons, others carry truth. Today we honor a man who fought without hate and won without violence. Standing before the crowd, Malik took the microphone. I never wanted to be a symbol, he said. I just wanted fairness. Every time someone uses their power to humiliate, another person has to rise to restore balance. That's what justice really is, not revenge, but restoration. He paused, scanning the audience. Alicia stood near the front row, tears in her eyes. Justice, he continued, is when truth becomes louder than fear. The audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted for minutes. Epilogue. Later that night, Malik walked alone through the city streets. Snowflakes drifted down, melting on his hands. He stopped by a street mural, painted by local artists, of a black man standing tall, surrounded by words that read, "Power without conscience is corruption." He smiled faintly. In his pocket, he carried two things: the folded apology letter from Rachel Moore, the USB drive containing every piece of evidence, now a relic of a battle already won. He looked up at the mural one last time and whispered, "This was never about you, Rachel. It was about what we all deserve. Respect." He turned away, the city lights reflecting in his eyes, and walked toward the horizon, not as a victim, not as a fighter, but as a man who chose truth over silence. Snow kept falling long after Malik disappeared down the narrow Denver street. Each step left a clean imprint on the sidewalk, as if the city itself were remembering where courage had walked. He reached the small community center on Franklin Avenue, a place that, months ago, had been half empty and forgotten. Now its windows glowed with light. Inside, dozens of people sat in a circle, notebooks open, listening to a young volunteer speak about how to film police encounters safely. When they noticed Malik at the door, applause erupted. "Mr. Johnson," the volunteer said, smiling. "We didn't think you'd come back tonight." Malik shrugged lightly. "I never left. I just needed a quieter way to keep fighting." The Seed Grows the Truth Line Foundation had become more than a hotline. It was a movement. They trained teenagers, supported whistleblowers, and built bridges between honest cops and communities that no longer trusted them. Some nights, Malik stayed late answering calls. Voices trembled on the other end of the line. A bus driver in Ohio, a college kid in Georgia, a single mother in Texas. He listened to every story as if it were his own. Alicia often joined him. She'd place warm coffee on his desk and tease, "You still think you're just a data guy?" He'd grin, just organizing chaos. But deep down he knew he'd become something else entirely. The return of the badge one afternoon, months later, a letter arrived with no sender's name. Inside was an old Denver PD badge, polished, clean, and a note that read, "Justice doesn't erase the past, but it can start a new chapter. R.M. Rachel Moore." Malik sat in silence for a long time, staring at the badge glinting in the sunlight. Then he placed it in a glass case on his office shelf, next to the first Truth Line flyer. No anger, no triumph. Just history preserved, a voice that carries. Months later, Eleanor Vega's documentary premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. The opening shot, Malik's quiet walk through snow, and his line, "Justice is when truth becomes louder than fear." The audience rose to its feet before the credits even rolled. Critics called it the most human story of the decade. Backstage, reporters surrounded Malik. "What do you hope people take away from this?" One asked. He smiled. "That power is temporary, but character lasts forever." Rachel's quiet redemption, far from the spotlight. Rachel Moore began working at a crisis intervention center under a new director who believed in second chances. She didn't hide her past. She told it to every new recruit. "I lost my badge," she'd say, "because I forgot what it stood for. If you wear one, make sure you remember." Sometimes she'd glance at the TV and see Malik speaking at events. Instead of guilt, she felt something softer, a fragile kind of peace. Legacy? 2 years later, Denver City Council voted to rename the community square the Malik Johnson Civic Forum. At the unveiling, children held banners reading "Truth Line Lives Here." Marcus Reed stood at the podium. "Change doesn't come from heroes," he said. "It comes from people who refuse to give up on decency." Malik stood behind him, humbled. When the cloth dropped and the sign was revealed, the crowd erupted in cheers. He looked at Alicia, who squeezed his hand. "Guess you're not just organizing chaos anymore," she whispered. He laughed softly. "Maybe just making sense of it. The circle completes." That night, Malik visited the same mural where it had all ended years ago. It was brighter now, freshly painted. Beneath the original quote, someone had added new words. One voice can start an echo, but 1,000 can move a mountain. He took a deep breath and whispered, "This echo won't fade." He turned to leave, his silhouette framed by the streetlights and the city, alive, flawed, and listening, seemed to whisper back, "We remember." The years moved forward like pages turning in a book. Denver had changed, quieter streets, more murals, more youth programs. But the world beyond it? It was waking up. The story of Malik Johnson, the man who stood against corruption and hate, had traveled far beyond Colorado. Across states and countries, his words echoed in classrooms, protests, and policy meetings. Justice isn't revenge. It's restoration. Seeds across the world. In a small school in Atlanta, a teacher played a clip from The Badge and the Burden. A 12-year-old boy, dark-skinned and shy, raised his hand. "Miss Carter," he asked, "can people like me really change something?" She smiled. "Malik Johnson did, and so can you." That boy, Darius Bell, would grow up remembering those words. Years later, he became a civil rights lawyer, walking into courtrooms with the same calm confidence Malik once had. People began to call him the Echo, Malik's new battle, but even heroes face quiet wars. Malik, now in his late 30s, had built a reputation as one of America's strongest voices for ethical reform. He had testified before Congress, spoken at universities, and trained over 10,000 young activists. Yet at night, when the speeches ended and the lights dimmed, he sat by his window, thinking about how much still hadn't changed. Racism hadn't disappeared. Power still corrupted, but something was different. People were watching now. They were questioning. They were awake. Alicia often joined him, placing her hand on his shoulder. "You can't save everyone," she'd whisper. He'd smile faintly. "Maybe not, but I can light the way for the ones who can." The International Call-On morning. Malik received a letter from South Africa, a group of reformers inviting him to speak at a global summit on justice. He hesitated. The last time he traveled internationally, security concerns followed him. But Alicia pushed him. "This is bigger than fear. Go." When he landed in Johannesburg, he was greeted by students holding signs. "We heard your story. Speak truth, even when it hurts." He smiled, humbled. At the summit, he addressed thousands from around the world. Police leaders, activists, survivors, and journalists. His voice carried across the auditorium. Every badge, every law, every title, they mean nothing if humanity is missing behind them. Justice doesn't need uniform. It needs conscience. When he finished, the crowd stood in thunderous applause. A young woman approached him after the speech. Her name was Lena Mbatha, a law student. She said softly, "Your story made me want to join the police, to change it from inside." Malik looked at her with quiet pride. "Then you've already won." Rachel's last letter back home, months later, a package arrived on no return address again. Inside was a single-page handwritten note. "I've been diagnosed with cancer. I've spent my final years helping at-risk teens. Tell them not to be like me, but to be better than I ever was. You gave me something I never thought I deserved, a chance to matter again. Thank you." Rachel and Malik sat still for a long time, tears welling quietly. He whispered, "You found your redemption, Rachel." He framed the letter and placed it beside the old badge. Now there were two reminders, one of justice and one of forgiveness. The foundation expands 5 years later. The Truthline Foundation had grown into a national network. Offices in 12 states, partnerships with major universities, and a training program for young officers called the Conscience Project. Their motto, "Courage is contagious." Darius Bell, the boy who once asked if change was possible, now ran the Atlanta branch. Lena Mbatha became the first black female police captain in her district, leading reform in her country, and Malik, he had stepped back from the spotlight, spending more time teaching quietly at community colleges, shaping the next generation. A conversation with tomorrow in one of his last recorded talks. A student asked him, "Mr. Johnson, how do you stay hopeful when the world keeps repeating its mistakes?" He smiled. "Because the world doesn't repeat itself. People do. And if we teach new hearts before they harden, the cycle breaks." The room fell silent. Then applause, long, sincere, unending. The final scene years later, on a calm spring evening, Malik stood again before the mural that had started it all. It had changed over time. New faces, new quotes, but the same energy. The neighborhood kids called it the Wall of Echoes. One of them asked, "Mr. Malik, did you really fight the police?" He chuckled. "No, son. I fought silence." They laughed and ran off, leaving him alone with the fading sun. He looked up at the mural, now taller, brighter, alive, and whispered, "Truth never dies. It just finds new voices." The wind carried his words through the streets, and the camera, if there were one, would pull back slowly, revealing a city not healed, but healing, not perfect, but progressing because one man's courage had become a generation's call. A legacy beyond the badge, beyond revenge, a story of awakening, redemption, and rebirth. Years continued to pass, like scenes in a film where the light slowly fades but never fully disappears. Malik's hair was streaked with gray now, but his voice still carried the same quiet authority that once silenced a courtroom. He walked through the halls of community centers, universities, and town meetings with a steady step. No guards, no entourage, just a man who had learned that strength doesn't shout. It stands. He had become more of a mentor than an activist, guiding young leaders who were ready to take the fight further. Some wanted to be lawyers, others journalists, and some simply wanted to protect their neighborhoods the right way. One afternoon, after a youth seminar, a teenager named Janelle Carter approached him. She wore a Truthline badge pinned to her jacket. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "my dad was one of the people Officer Moore stopped years ago. He never talked about it. But when he saw your story, he said he forgave her. He said it was the first night he slept in peace." Malik's eyes softened. "Then both of you found freedom," he said. She smiled. "I'm going to law school because of that." Malik placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then never stop asking why. That's how justice stays alive." A city remembered Denver had changed beyond recognition. The once gray, tense streets now carried art, color, and energy. Police officers walked their beats unarmed, greeting locals by name. A memorial stood in the center of the Civic Plaza, a sculpture made of intertwined metal hands, symbolizing unity through struggle. At the base, an inscription read, "To the voices that refuse to be silent." Malik often visited in the quiet of dawn, when the city still slept. He'd place his hand on the cold metal and whisper, "Stay honest, Denver. Stay brave." Alicia would sometimes join him, her eyes reflecting the morning light. "You think it'll last?" She'd ask. Malik would nod. Truth doesn't need a guardian, just a beginning. A final speech on his 60th birthday, the Truthline Foundation held a surprise event, not to celebrate him, but to honor the generation he'd inspired. The auditorium was packed with hundreds of young reformers, officers, lawyers, and journalists. Marcus Reed, older now but still fiery, took the stage. "When Malik stood against injustice," he said, "he didn't just fight for a verdict, he fought for vision. And because of that, we stand taller." The audience rose in applause as Malik stepped up to the microphone. He waited for the room to quiet, then said softly, "I once thought justice was about punishment. I learned it's about possibility. Every person you save from becoming bitter is one less chain on the next generation. And every truth you tell, even if no one listens, becomes a spark in someone else's storm." The room fell silent. A few cried, and in that moment, it wasn't a speech. It was a prayer. The last lesson in the years that followed, Malik's health began to fade, though he rarely admitted it. He continued to teach, write, and visit community meetings until his doctors insisted he rest. One night, while writing in his journal, he penned his final words. "If I have done anything worthy, let it not be my name that survives, but the courage to speak when silence feels safe." When Alicia found the notebook beside his desk the next morning, she smiled through tears. He had passed peacefully in his sleep, the eternal echo. His funeral drew people from across the country, activists, politicians, old friends, even reformed officers who had once served under Rachel Moore. Lena Mbatha flew in from South Africa. Darius Bell led the closing prayer. The mayor spoke. He didn't chase fame or titles. He taught us that power means nothing without conscience. And now, his truth belongs to us. After the service, children released white balloons into the sky. Each balloon carried a tag that read, "Speak, even if your voice shakes." As the balloons disappeared into the clouds, a breeze swept through the crowd. Calm, warm, familiar. Alicia looked up, whispered softly, "You did it." "Malik, you really did." Legacy beyond time years later. Schools across the country taught the Johnson Principle, a course about ethics, reform, and the moral cost of silence. The mural on Franklin Avenue became a landmark, visited by thousands. At its base stood a plaque that read, "Truth never dies. It becomes the voice of tomorrow."